Okay, for this project, I'm using a regular Red Heart Super Saver, which is a medium weight, 100% 4-ply acrylic. And the color I'm using is called Icelandic. And there's 236 yards in this variegated skein. You're going to need about 300 yards. So you're going to have to pick up 2 skeins if you get a variegated. But if you get a solid color, I'm pretty sure they're a little bit more than 300 yards. So you would only need 1 skein of those. And then I'm using a size J, which is a 6mm crochet hook. Okay, you want to start out with a chain of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to work a slip stitch into the first stitch to form a ring. And we're going to be working clusters through the ring. So we're going to start off by chaining 1, and this is how a cluster is formed. We're going to yarn over, go into the ring, drop a loop, and then yarn over and go through the first 2 loops on our hook. And then we're going to do that 4 times total. So we're going to yarn over again, go through the ring, drop a loop, yarn over and go through the first 2 loops. So that was 2 times. Again, yarn over through the ring, drop a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2 loops. That's 3 times. 1 more time, go through the first 2. So that was 4 times, and you should have 5 loops on your hook. You yarn over and go through all 5 loops like that. And then we're going to chain 1. So that was a cluster, or it's a double crochet 4 together. I'm going to call it a cluster though. And what we're going to do is 8 of them through this ring. So I'm going to go again. I'm going to yarn over, go into the ring, drop a loop, yarn over and go through the first 2 loops. And I'm going to do that 4 times. So that was once, 2, 3, and 4, and I'll have 5 loops, and I'm going to yarn over and go through all 5, and then I'm going to chain 1. And I want to have a total of 8 clusters in this ring, and I've got 2 so far. You might have to keep pulling them over to make them all fit. Because I'm going to go again, I'm going to yarn over, drop a loop, yarn over and go through the first 2. So that was once, 2, 3, 4, and you'll have 5 loops, yarn over and go through all 5, chain 1. So there's 3 clusters in my ring now. I'm going to slide them over, and I'm going to keep doing that until I get 8. Two, 3, and 4. 5 loops on your hook, yarn over and go through all 5. Chain 1 and start again. So I'm going to keep working until I get all 8 clusters through my ring. Okay, once you have your 8 clusters and you made it back around, you want to make sure you chain 1 after that last one. And what we're going to do is slip stitch right here into the side of this very first puff. So kind of right there. And that's going to end round 1. Now you can pull your tail to close up that circle a little bit. And then I'll always sew it together at the end a little bit more. Now to start row 2, what you want to do is slip stitch right over here. It's going to be tight. And 1 time over here to this first chain 1 space. So just pull your first 2 clusters apart and slip stitch right through them. Like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work 2 clusters into that chain 1 space. So I'm going to start by chaining 1, and I'm going to work a cluster right through it, right through the space. So there's one, and now I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to go back into that same space and work another cluster. Like that. So I got 2 clusters in that space. I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to jump to the next chain one space, which is in between these next 2 clusters, and I'm going to work 2 clusters into that chain one space. So what I'm doing now is working 2 clusters with the chain one in between them, in each of the chain one spaces from the previous round. So there's one cluster, chain one, go into the space and do another one. There's 2 clusters, chain one, and then you go to the in between the next space right here, and you want to work 2 clusters into that spot. There's one, chain one, go back in it again, work another. Just like that. Chain one, and now you jump to your in between your next 2 and work 2 more. So you're going to repeat that all the way around, working the 2 clusters in each of the chain one spaces. And when you get back around, you should have a total of 16 clusters. Okay, when you make it back around and you got your 16 clusters, what you want to do is slip stitch again into this side of this first puff. Like that. And that'll end round 2. Now for round 3, you want to start by slip stitching over into this chain one space of the first clusters here, first 2 clusters. And I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to work 2 clusters again in this chain one space. So just like before. Oops. So there's one, chain one. I'm going to go right back in and do another one. And there's 2. Then I'm going to chain one. Now what I'm going to do is work 1 cluster right here in this chain one space into the next chain one space. It's like, it's not where we put 2 together, it's just the chain one in between the 2. So I'm just going to work 1 cluster right through that space. Like that. Then I'm going to chain one, and now I'm going to work 2 clusters right here in the next chain one space, which is in between these 2 clusters. So now it's 2 clusters in this chain one space. There's 1, chain one. I'm going to go back in it again and work another one. Like that, and then chain one, and now it's just 1 cluster right here in this next chain one space. So it's 2 clusters and then 1 cluster, 2 clusters and then 1 clusters in every chain space all the way around. So we're just kind of repeating what we do in here. And then chain 1. So right here we'll get 2 clusters, and the next one will get 1, and then 2, then 1, all the way back to the beginning. And when you get back around, you should have a total of 24 clusters for round 3. Okay, when you make it back around and you have your 24 clusters, again, we're just going to slip stitch right here into this space on the side of your first cluster, like that. And now we're going to slip stitch over in between these first 2 clusters again and chain 1, and we're going to work 2 clusters again right here into this first chain 1 space. So there's 1, chain 1, go back in it again. There's 2, chain 1, and now we're going to work 1 cluster in this chain 1 space and 1 cluster into the next chain 1 space. So 1 cluster in each of the next 2 chain spaces. So there's 1 there, and then we jump to the next one. Chain 1, 1 there, and now the next one is 2 clusters into this space here. And that is the repeat this time around. There's 1, chain 1, go back into that same space and do another one. And there's 2 into that space. Now 1 cluster in each of the next 2 chain spaces. There's 1, chain 1, and then you go to the next space. There's 1 there, chain 1, and then it's 2 clusters in the next. So 2 clusters, 1, 1, 2 clusters, 1, 1, all the way back around to the beginning. And when you get back around, you should have a total of 32 clusters at the end of round 4. Okay, when you make it back around and you have your 32 clusters now, what you want to do is slip stitch again into the side here of this first puff, and now we'll end around 4. Now it's just going to be the same from here on out. It's just going to be 1 cluster in every chain 1 space. So what we're going to do every time is slip stitch right here in the side like we just did, and then slip stitch over to the first chain 1 space, and then we start by chaining 1. Now we're going to work 1 cluster in every chain 1 space all the way around. And we're just going to keep doing rounds of that. And you should always end chain 1, jump to the next chain 1 space with 32 clusters at the end of every round. Chain 1, jump to the next one. So it's pretty easy. No more increasing or anything, like I said. Now, the more rounds that you start to do of the 1 cluster in every stitch, the hat will start to go down and start forming the hat shape, since we're not increasing anymore. Chain 1 and jump to the next. So I'm just going to keep doing rounds of 1 cluster in every chain 1 space, And when I get back here, what I do is I just slip stitch into this first spot here, and then slip stitch over to the first chain 1 space, and start again with 1 cluster in every stitch, ending with 32 clusters at the end of every round. And I'm going to do that for as long as I want my hat to be. I'm going to do 16 rounds of the 1 cluster in every stitch. Now you can do more or less, but I'm going to do 16 of the 1 in every stitch. So counting all together, it'll be 20, because we did 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of increases, and then I'm going to do 16 rounds of just 1 in every stitch. Okay, once you get done with your 16 rounds of the 1 cluster in every stitch, from the top you should have a total of 20, because we had the 4 increase rounds and then we did the 16. And now what we're going to do is put a brim on it, and I'm just going to do a single crochet brim. So I just went ahead and slip stitched right into, like we normally did, into that cluster. Now what I'm going to do is chain 1, and I'm going to go right back into that spot that I slip stitched into and do a single crochet like that. And now I'm going to jump into the chain 1 space and do a single crochet. And then I'm going to jump right here into the top of this cluster and do a single crochet. And then in between them, in the chain 1 space, right through them, single crochet. And then in the top of the cluster, and then in between them, and in the top. And I'm just going to do this all the way around. 1 single crochet in between the clusters, that chain 1 space, and then 1 single crochet into the top of the cluster like that. So I'm going to work this all the way around until I get back to the beginning. Okay, when you make it all the way around, you should have 64 single crochets. And now what I'm going to do is use the stitch marker. I'm just going to use this piece of yarn, and I'm going to set it right here. That way I can work in rounds now, and I know where I end and where I begin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by single crocheting right over here into our first single crochet. Not the chain 1, but the first single crochet. Just like that. And now I'm going to work around again, putting 1 single crochet in every stitch. Until I get back to my stitch marker. And when I get back to my stitch marker, I still should have 64 single crochets. Okay, whenever you make it back around to your stitch marker, I'm just going to pull my stitch marker up, and you want to count and make sure you have 64 stitches. I'm going to move it up, and I'm going to go around again. So I'm just going to keep doing a round of 1 single crochet in every stitch. So I'm going to just jump right over to the next stitch and single crochet, and then 1 single crochet in every stitch. And I'm going to do rounds of 1 single crochet in every stitch, and every round should have 64 single crochets when you get back to your stitch marker. And I'm going to do this for as tall as I want the brim of my hat to be, or as wide as I want the brim of my hat to be. Okay, I went ahead and did 5 rounds of the 1 single crochet in every stitch. So starting from the very top all the way down, all the rows, you should have 25. But if you want to do more rows on the brim, you can, or less. That's completely up to you. But once you get the number, if you want to do it like me and you get your 5 rows done, I made it back to my stitch marker. I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch into my next stitch. like that. And then I'm going to slip stitch one more time into the next one. And then I'm going to take my stitch marker out and I'm going to clip my yarn if I can find my scissors. But I'm just going to clip my yarn, hide my tails, and tie off, and that is it. That is all there is to it. I think it turned out pretty nice. I really like the colors. Well, I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. I hope that you're able to follow along okay. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And check me out on Facebook and Instagram, Pinterest and Twitter. I'll put links to all that stuff below in the description box. And until next time, have a good day.